Application by Serengeti Trust.
If you want, you just direct, you just direct whatever site plan you're actually showing. It should be. Yeah, maybe. Closer.
This is for lot number 2144-1C-7-3A-R1 in the municipality of Tumuli. Applicant is Ross B. and Sarah Morrison on behalf of the Serengeti Trust. This is a zone change application from R2 multifamily dwelling to M1 light industrial for a self-storage facility and equipment parking. Application number 2023-25. First, I'd like to also state the purpose of this, why we are having this public hearing again. Before we open the floor for testimony, this hearing has been renoticed again, because of the open government compliance. We had our February 2024 public hearing, which was not properly archived on video, which is a requirement by Guam's open government law, 5 GCA on section 43122. And to cure that defect, we are convening this new fully live stream hearing. Preserving the prior record, all oral and written testimony that was presented at the January 23rd and February hearings in 2024, including letters, exhibits, and agency comments. Those materials are marked as Exhibit A and are available for review. Here with our Tumuli Mayor's Office and the Department of Land Management. Opportunity to update and add testimony. Anyone who spoke previously may, if they wish, reaffirm or supplement their comments. New speakers are also welcome. Whether you said before or not, please state your name clearly for the record. Speakers will be recognized in the order they sign up. We will have the sign-in sheet circulating with Ms. Mesa here at the front. And we ask that you limit your oral remarks to 3 minutes so everyone has a chance. Written statements are encouraged, and kindly hand them to our administrative assistant, or you may email the Tumuli Mayor's Office at tatatua2013@gmail.com. All remarks must be addressed to the Municipal Planning Council. We remind everyone to please be courteous. Okay, and now I'd also like to invite now the presenter, Mr. Dan Swayze, to give a presentation in regards to this application and project.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for this. Dan Swayze here on behalf of the applicants, Serengeti Trust, Morrison, and joined by my associate, Kyle Warhawk. Thank you for the introduction about where we've been and where we are now. For that reason, I'm going to abbreviate the presentation as much as I possibly can. However, for the record, some things have to be said, so I'm going to go through most of what I said before, but a little faster and maybe not in as much detail, okay? All right, so let's get started right away then. Why are we here? What is proposed? Your questions and comments and what happens next. That's going to be my agenda for now. We are here because the landowner of this property would like to conduct some uses which are not permitted in the zone of the property now. The property is zoned now R2, multifamily, it's 2 acres in the area. And the applicant would like to engage in heavy equipment parking, the Moraco equipment parking there, and to So about 2/3 of the 2 acres, and 1/3 of the acre would be for a self-storage facility. Now, those two uses are not permitted in the commercial zone, in the R zone, but they are in the M1 zone. So that's why we're going through this process to see if we can get that change of zone on that property. Yep. What is proposed, real briefly, is an equipment parking area of about 1.5 acres or so, where the excess equipment from adjacent Morco would be parked in the property, on the property, as it's being sold or brought in or taken out, et cetera, et cetera. And the self-storage facility is a typical self-storage facility. There's about 12 of them on Guam now. They're one of these places where you go in and you rent a 10 by 10 or a 5 by 10, or in some cases a 10 by 20 locked cage. And it's a very low impact use. One staff member is all it takes. You have a card which gets you through the gate that you take your vehicle in. The same card allows you access to the door. Then you go to your locker, you can use your own combination lock and open it, close it, and take things out, put things in. I say there are 10 or 12 of these in existence now. I can also tell you I'm working on 2 others besides this one. Self-storage facilities, they're a hot item right now. I don't know why, really, but they are. The waiting list is like 6 to 9 months to get any size cage. And so it's a market opportunity, and that's why in this case, the Morrisons think of it as a good benefit for this area of Tabuni, in addition to it being low impact, easy to build, hardly any traffic, and very, very little demand on utilities. That is what is being proposed. Now, my main purpose here is to tell you what it's about, but then of course to take your comments, take your questions, try to give you answers, right? I'll be here as long as it's necessary, so that we have an understanding of what it is that's being proposed and the impact of what is being proposed. We may or may not come to an agreement that it should be approved, but we want an common understanding of the facts and figures of it. Yeah? So that concludes my presentation overall. I will say this just to catch us up, as the mayor mentioned, to catch us up on what has happened already. A few things have happened. Through the previous 3 public hearings, 1 by land management and 2 by the MPC, certain questions and issues have come up. And we dialogued with them and we came to an agreement. For instance, some of the nearby property owners asked that the setback, the buffer zone between the heavy equipment parking in their backyard, for instance, be a minimum of 10 feet buffer zone, right? Rather than 5 feet required by law. No problem. Done. One of the neighbors also asked that we terminate the herbicide spraying that was being done to keep the weeds down in that bigger lot. Now, we issued a termination of services letter January 12, 2024, finished. Another request was that we make sure that no renters actually operate a business out of that cage. If you see over in Harmon, there are dozens of such cages where you go in, there's a business license. There's a person sitting there and they're selling something or they're doing something. It is technically legal. We were asked not to allow it. We agreed to that. Then, fourthly, the question came up, as it always would. The M1 zone is a light industrial zone, okay? Think of it as the possibility of semi-nasty uses. Yeah, you can get dirty, noisy, smelly uses, permitted uses in an M1. Okay, so what about this? What if we change? The applicant agreed to put a restrictive covenant in the deed saying that only these 2 uses So it doesn't matter, that restricted covenant goes with it. If somebody else buys this property and they want to do something else, they have to go through the whole process again. So that is the safeguard that we built in response to the request that, hey, so you can do all these other things. What's going to stop you from, that's going to stop us from, it only allows these two uses. Lastly, fifth and lastly, this council was very interested in preventing additional traffic on E-Power Road. And the condition of approval for our project after the last round of hearings was that we find an alternate access between Lamas and Guerrero Street, commonly known as Pickett Hill, right? Okay, so we did a study, Kyle did it for me. We went through all of the neighboring lots, adjacent lots between here and there. We pulled up all the property maps from security title, and we studied all of the existing easements and preserved easements and rights of way, and there is no access to them. There just is none. You can't drive from here to there without going over private property. There is one lot from which you could carve an easement and make that whole thing possible. It is technically possible, but that would require negotiations with the landowner or the Department of Public Works condemning a 40-foot wide easement. So it is possible, but such negotiations and combination are not within our wherewithal. So we couldn't do it. Those are the 5 points I came up. That's the way we responded. Now, before we go to the questions and answers, let me say this. The last round, I saw 2 points of opposition. One point of opposition was that an M1 zone is incompatible with this area. The other point of opposition is we don't want any more traffic on already congested E-Power Road. Those were my takeaways, okay? To that, I respond this way. Yes, M1 would be incompatible, except those are already M1's properties along there anyway. And by putting this M1 in between those M1s and the residences, you have an insurance policy that only the benign uses of equipment parking and a self-storage facility will be built there, okay? That's the only thing that can be done. The other permitted uses for M1 that are along that strip, read the zoning code. As I said, you can have dirty, nasty, smelly uses. All you have to do is get a building permit. You won't have to come to this NPC, you won't have to go to the utility. So in one sense, the incompatibility might be offset by the fact that it's a bit of insurance policy that this is all you're gonna get. And frankly, equipment parking and a self-storage facility are about as benign a use as you can get out of it. That's that. Secondly, no more traffic on E-Power Road. And I get it, I do E-Power Road too. It's a little better, right, with it's actually phase 2 that was down there. It's a little better with that, but still. It's congested and it's totally under capacity for the tributary traffic flows that go into it. Okay, so what does that mean for us? Well, the DPW approved projected traffic from the self-storage facility is 37 vehicles a day average. Period. But the equipment parking, nothing, because the equipment parking never goes out on the street, it just goes right between Warrenville and the equipment parking area. So 37 ADT, mean ADT, all right? If the property at 2 acres, now multifamily zone, is developed for apartments, we can put 64 units on there, 64 units without any height, density, or parking variance, and go straight to design, permitting, and construction. We'll never come to the NPC, we'll never have to do the GLUC. So that's a bit of a trade-off right here. Now, are we gonna do that? I don't know that. I honestly, I do not know that. Morrisons want this, they want the equipment parking, and they want the self-storage, okay? But on the other hand, they don't want a piece of property, he's not gonna lie idle. They're gonna do something with it, and what can they do with it? Today, 64 units, okay? Now, what is the traffic, for instance, for 64 units? I can't answer that exactly, but I can say this. About a year ago, Kyle and I did an apartment complex in Gigo for Goza. Okay, it was a 20-unit apartment house. And the average daily traffic for that was 133 vehicles per day. 133. Now that's 20 units. This could be 64, so just generally go 3 times 133 to have 400. That's what Public Works would project the traffic from 64 units. So I don't know where this is going. I hope we get some sort of compromise, some sort of something here that we can work together, make the whole place better together, right? But those are the facts, and that was my job to present the facts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Swavely. Now we'll go ahead and move on to the public testimony. Based on the sign-in sheet, we ask that, we'll call your name and please come forward, state your name for the record, and let us know if you're speaking in support or in opposition, or just merely providing comment. So please come forward to the microphone, Ms. Jackie Marathi.
Good holiday. My name is Jackie Ariola Maranti. I've been a resident, my family has been residents of the E-Power Road area for 70 years. So we have seen so much change, good change and not so good change in the area. I'm here to resubmit testimony against the proposal. And the reason being is, first of all, this testimony was already submitted almost a year and a half ago for this. But more importantly, I think the rationale and the reason that was given to reopen this hearing seems to have been a little bit unclear. And I think, we're here because we feel strongly about this, but also we're very curious about this confusion about what happened to the video that was supposed to be accessible. So with that in mind, there were a couple of things I would like to bring up. The E-Powell Hill Road has been a real mixed bag of good traffic and a lot of traffic that's also been with heavy buses, heavy trucks. That has really added to the traffic of the area. As anyone in that area knows, when there is an accident or an incident, the two areas that go both between Santa Torres and also Route 1 are just congested to no end. So the traffic already has not been addressed. Moreover, we still have not completed the renovation and reconstruction of phase 1 of E-Powell Road. And that's going to allow for incredible closure and incredible delays as well as when we have to totally close the E-Powell Road hill. What that is going to bring is not only additional traffic, regardless of whether or not Mr. Swavely's project goes on, because it will. The other thing is the residential zoning with families and children continues to be in that area. And I think having additional, whether it be adequate parking or a self-storage unit, just merely brings additional traffic, additional individuals that may be going to be there in the area. And I think for the sake of our children, I think it's it's really important to keep it as neat and as family friendly as we can do it. The other thing I'd like to bring up is in the area, there are 3 licensed child care facilities. 3, all within walking distance of this rezoning area. And I think it's really important for those of you who have been through that area early in the morning, when people are dropping off and people are picking up, that we have just abundant traffic of people who are dropping off babies, toddlers, 3 and 4-year-olds. I think we need to be really careful for, and watch and manage the traffic that's going in that area. I would also like to see, Mr. Swayze had talked about the self-storage area. Where are the studies that indicate there are more needs for a self-storage area? People actually are needing our areas. So where is the need and demand for that? Finally, in as much as there's an assurance that nothing will be done other than for the 2 businesses, the self-storage as well as the parking. As you and I know, changes can be done in an instant. And so there's really no guarantee that that's going to stay the same. And probably the most important thing, members of the Municipal Planning Commission, is that this is another example of what I'd like to call zone creep. It's there already, so we'll just keep adding more and more and more. Since when does M1 become the signature of Lee Road? And why do we keep allowing this zone creep to continue as there are families that are living there, children that are living there, of all kinds? And so what I'm here to talk about, and for here, just to remind you, is that EPAL Road is a family and residential area. And continual adding of commercial uses does nothing but sully the environment, because even with parking of heavy equipment, there's no guarantee that that's not going to result in potential environmental impact for that. And I think we need to be really careful about protecting the area for the families and protecting the area for environments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Marai. Now we'll go ahead and get comments from Attorney Brown.
I'm not going to get real critical about this, because I think we're going to have to use these things that are there. Because me, my feeling about it is that we got a bunch of squares, no nights and it's a game. So it's my purpose is, I just think that we're only going to get it more crowded if we both have variation of usage that is being proposed.
Thank you very much, Attorney Brown. Dan, you also signed up to speak because you're the presenter, but are you going to be making other remarks? Or, have you signed it as
No, I have no other remarks. I can respond to the concerns there. It sounds like Jackie is a vote for apartment houses.
Okay, Okay, so then we'll go ahead and move on to, the others who would like to give testimony.
Is that,
Oh, please come, talk for the mic for the record. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not in favor of additional. It's almost like an accessory. No, don't, can you indicate, is it on? Oh.
mine is,
Yours?
No, yours is on Jackie.
Okay, thank you. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the proposal we have in front of us does not add to the neighborhood, to the environment that we have along the road. That's what I'm saying. Thank you.
I stand corrected, thank you.
Thank you. So then we'll go ahead and move along now to, Mr., former Senator Tony Lambrana.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the MPC. My name is Tony Almarina. I'm a resident of Tamuni, mainly around that area where the proposed project is going to be. Mayor, if you allow me, can I ask Mr. Swayze a couple questions? Okay, then, first of all, you had mentioned there are other M1s within that street. What other properties are in fact M1 along Eco Road?
Not along the street, behind houses that are on the street.
Right, but not directly on.
No, sir, no.
So therefore, if we approve this one, then this would be the first one along the street.
It would be the first one that has along the street direct access to Mamas, yes.
Secondly,
Well, excuse me, I don't know, there might be some closer to Pickadale. You know, when you go out there, those are
well,
not.
not
But
along, not along.
not the stretch you're talking about, correct.
Secondly, currently, what business is conducted by Morico in their current facility? I know they park equipment there, I know they service equipment, and so are they, you know, you say it's going to be an equipment parking, but are they actually going to be servicing equipment, changing oil,
No, sir.
doing repairs, doing?
Good point. Yeah, that came up earlier, from the county senator, and that would also be a condition of absolutely nothing gets done to the equipment in the parking area except occasional running, right? Turning on, turning off, but then only for a few minutes at a time. Absolutely no service.
Third,
Good question.
with the current business that they're conducting now on the property, why need an M1 at this point in time? Because really, the business they're actually conducting now is not allowed by law. They are conducting M1 business on an R2 property. They are servicing equipment, they are storing equipment, and that's the reason why they need an M1. It's not necessarily for the storage, but primarily for the heavy equipment. So therefore, I don't know how they even got a business license to even conduct business currently on that property. Revenue tax and all the other agencies that are required by law to approve business licenses on properties should never have approved business to be conducted there that they're currently doing. That's M1 work. And I agree with Jackie, and we live there. It's really a quality of life issue, right?
It's a what
It's a
issue?
quality of life.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah,
you have
I get
heavy
that.
equipment, you have, you know, their housing is primarily housing. I remember years ago, Dr. Lombard, Peter Lombard, had a proposal to rezone property to build a clinic. And the residents said no.
I followed that, yeah.
Yeah.
And therefore, the clinic was never built. Again, we're dealing more with the quality of life issue. You say, well, we can build apartments. You know what I mean? Yeah, they can. That's currently allowed by the R2.
Correct.
But the reality is we're not here to talk about R2s, we're talking about N1s. And the reality is along that strip, there are no M1s. There are no M1s. And that would change the complexion, as Jackie had mentioned. It's a creep. Eventually, we approve this one. What makes another lot become an M1? I mean, let's face it. The land use commission and land management, they're real good. Well, there's already this M1 there. So we'll just do another M1 next door, and then M1 next door. And, the reality is when you buy property, and that's the zoning, the people who have built their lives and their community around those areas knew what they're getting into. They knew that I'm living in an R1, R2 area, and I feel safe that no other land, rezoning would take place. Because I want my community, I want to be in R1. Yeah, okay, they upgraded to a whole lot of areas there to R2s, but the reality is it's quality of life, right? How do we change the complexion of now our living, conditions in that area? You say there's just like park equipment there, but there's servicing equipment there now. They're changing oil, they're repairing equipment on an R2 property, which violates it really the use of that property at this point in time. And I've always questioned, how did they even get a business license to do the work that they're currently doing on an R2? Why was an NOV not issued by EPA, land management, and all the other regulatory agencies? Why is that? So really, it's quality of life issue. If you're threatening us, well, we can build 64 units, but it's still a residential area. We're not having, like I said, we've seen it. I mean, we don't want to have our community turn into Harmon, right? Where, we allow one M1, then there's apartments next to an M1. I mean, our area is deficit. There's disadvantages of improving that hill road. Now we've got additional traffic, but that's a main thoroughfare now. It's a main thoroughfare now. You know how long it takes me in the morning if I go out from my street? Traffic already is backed up to like almost SBA clinic. If I wanted to go to Donkey, I have to go around. I go around to JFK, and then down the hill, then I gotta cross, make a U-turn at Depot Road to get to Donkey. So, it's quite a kind issue there, and NPC members, we live there. I know the Morrisons, for many years. The reality is they don't live there. We do. That's the big difference. When they bought that property, they knew it was an R2. Why are we now changing the landscape of the community? Again, like I said, how are they even conducting business as they have for the last 20 years with the current R2 zoning? It amazes me. It means W1 is not doing their job. The regulatory agencies who are committed to preserving the quality of life that people want have failed. And we can't continue to let it happen. That's why I oppose the changing from R2 to M1. Because it's just the reality is, we change it to an M1, what stops them from doing other things on that piece of property? I granted you could have some stipulations and so forth, but the reality is you go back to the land use commission and make amendments and make changes, right? And we've seen it happen a lot in the past. So it's one of the reasons why I oppose it. It's quality of life issue. I live there. I respect the Morrisons, but they don't live there. Mr. Swaley doesn't live there. We live there. And that's the big difference.
Thank you very much, Senator, Namrana.
Anyone else would like to make a give oral testimony? Okay, yeah, Mr. Swaley.
Yes.
Close, go ahead,
Senator.
respond.
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, well spoken. One point of clarification I want to make about N1 properties along lines. There are in fact, okay, so here's the subject property, yeah, with access to EPAL and Lamas, and this is also N1, all the red is N1. So there are other N1 properties bounding Lamas, but as we exchanged the information, not between there and EPAL, which I think was the reference you were making, right? But I mistakenly just included all of Lamas. That of course is not true. One other clarification. The restrictive covenant that will be put on the deed, we've used this in the past. And it's worked. You can't go to GLUC and lift the restrictive covenant on the deed. They don't have that type of authority. So, and the way it works is when the Morrisons have a condition of approval, for instance, that says you must have a restrictive covenant on this property, limiting all uses to equipment parking and self-storage. If that ever changes, then their approval to rezone is revoked, and all their business licenses for those are revoked. That's really the way it works. I know a little bit about how we were referring to the old days when you could go into GLUC and get anything. It was never quite that, but I understand. But the restrictive covenant, we have found to be bulletproof, and that's why we suggested it. Now, with respect, lastly, then, with respect to this is where you live, it's residential. Okay, all right. It's a request to go from R2 to M1 for these things only. But if the council representing all of the neighborhood feels like that's just out of line, okay, then we go back to the apartments. It's not a threat. It means it's just the highest and best use of the property, for which is already zoned, already a master plan for it. It was R2 before it was bought by the Morrisons, right? Right, as you mentioned, yeah. And all this has happened before I even came aboard, including everything else there. So, it's a good point. Thank you for that.
May I ask a question? Is Morgan owned by the Morrison family, and does Atkins Grove have any ownership of that company?
Sorry, once more.
Is Morgan owned by the Morrison family, and does Atkins Grove have any ownership in Morgan?
Yeah, I think I can scroll down all Morrison.
Okay, so
And
it's
Morrison, Ross and his brother, right?
okay, so the equipment and the business that's being currently used along the road, that is an Atkins Grove operation.
Now, this is the last year.
I just wanted that to clarify.
Marco for a while was an employee-owned company.
Yes.
They did one of those things a few years ago, right?
I remember.
You remember, right? It was very successful. They made a lot of money. Now they can't.
So who is this zone change for? Is it Serengeti, or is it for Atkins Grove?
Well, it's for Serengeti, because Serengeti is the property owner,
Okay,
but it would be contingent upon a continued agreement between Atkins Grove and Serengeti to park equipment That could go away. I mean, I don't know where it would go, there's just not much land. And you see the inventory that AK has right now. Even other places, they have cars just all over the place. So, yeah, right. That's how we do it.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you very much. We'll move along to
Can I-
Ms.
can I-
Pearson.
Can I have a follow-up question?
Just to inject a point of information. There was a question that Mr. Roddy raised earlier about, we've done this, and I remember we were doing the same thing 18 months ago. And you're probably wondering, why are we going through this again? And to reiterate, when this came up before us approximately 4 months ago, the problem was that we could not find the video record of the previous public hearings. And apparently, according to the law, minuted meetings are not allowed. It has to be a video meeting. I think it specifically said Facebook live stream.
Live stream.
Right, live stream. And that's the purpose for this public hearing. It doesn't change what was said before. In fact, in February of last year, the FPC passed a resolution opposing this. So we are on record as opposed to, as opposition to this change. And the reason we're doing this right now is just so that we can memorialize the public hearings. We're not rehashing it. There have not been any substantial changes that I've heard, that I've seen, or that I'm aware of. So when you made your testimony approximately a year and a half, a year ago, they still stand. We took that into consideration. We passed the resolution. Just to clarify.
And is that resolution still valid?
Yes, it is, and I believe that when we were approached about it 2 months ago, the NPC as a group not elected, I should use that word, affirmed that resolution. There was no change. And Jack, just FYI, when the mayor presented to us, there was a question of whether we need to pass another resolution. We let the previous resolution stand, subject to, if we did need to do it again, do it again.
Yeah, just one.
20 days, yeah, 20 days, they vote on it.
May I make a comment there? I read the law slightly differently. I read the law as saying a resolution shall be passed at a regularly scheduled, publicly noticed, regular meeting of the MPC within 20 days of the second MPC public hearing. Now, if that other public hearing is null and void because it was a live stream event, then this would be coming up the second. So you would need to either restate that resolution or something, put a new date on it or whatever you want. And that's why the regular meeting has an agenda item.
Right.
That resolution. Got it.
It is our agenda.
Right. Got it. Thank you.
Since we're doing housekeeping here, just a question. This is a public hearing, not a NBC meeting. So therefore, a quorum of NBC members is not required. Because I don't want the client and land management, and now the question that there was a lack of quorum.
No, it's okay.
Okay. Okay, so clarify, follow up on Jackie's question. So therefore, the property, the part is really gonna be AKA products, right? Not, the Morris family.
The equipment?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was always made clear. The equipment,
It belongs to, it will be
it belongs to,
AKA.
and that's why there's never any, that's why there's never any access on e-power or Mamas for the equipment. It just is backgate.
See, my question here is, AKA, if you look around where AKA is, they park cars to the side of those empty lots, they park cars all over everywhere. And that goes behind, and there's a fire department there and everything. My thing is, why don't they just use their existing fire department, their heavy equipment? but the reality is, now I'm getting a better understanding of what,
Good,
their
good.
intentions are, but I still oppose it. Because, again, it's another issue. Do we wanna, I was the director of the Rural Statistics and Finance,
Yes.
when we actually did the central and northern land use plan. And I know that area, yeah, we did, now, these are recommendations, it's not a zoning law or a zoning plan, it's a land use plan. Right? It's just a recommendation. And I know Mr. Swaley likes to say, well, it's in the land use plan, it's designated for M1. But that's just a plan. Right? It still needs to go through the processes and to get input from the community if a zone change was to be made. The land use plan is not a zoning plan. It's just a recommendation. And, when we went around to Jigu and Dededu, Kamuning, with North and Central, we were doing this land use plan. A lot of the residents opposed our plan because they didn't want properties in their area to be rezoned. And we told them, this is just a recommendation. It's not set in stone. It's just a recommendation. It would still have to go through public hearings, land use commission, and before any zone changes can actually happen. So I'm just telling NPC members, don't think that because in the land use plan it says it's recommended for M1, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be an M1. If the community around there doesn't want it, you can actually say no, because that's what the community wants.
Thank you. I'm very familiar with the 2005 Northern Central Land Use Plan used all the time. And to this day, Senator, that plan is still a required reference for any application. That plan is just recommendations, as you said. For this area, that plan recommended mixed use. So commercial and one residential, etc. You're right, we just use it as a guideline. Thank you. And it's being updated right now.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, we'd like to go ahead and thank everyone who participated in the testimony. The council will meet in regards to this at a later time. And we'll go ahead and also let everyone know that written testimony will still be accepted until June 20th. At the close of business, 5:00 p.m., we will still be accepting testimony in regards to this public hearing. And so we'll go ahead and adjourn this public hearing at 5:25 p.m. And we wish everyone a safe evening. Mrs. Osmasi for attending this public hearing, as we will be having another peer public on this at 5:30 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone.
A lot better than the first. I just live streamed it.
Yeah, 5-minute break. Stretch. We'll do it.
So yeah, Jake will just roll it over. So we can stop it.
Oh, we do have cookies and coffee for happy hour.